Hello, students. Today we are going to look at another short, soulful, symbolic poem from our Class 10 English NCERT book, First Flight. The ball poem, written by John Berryman, is the fifth poem of our book. Now, listen to me very carefully as I recite the entire poem for you. The ball poem by John Berryman. What is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go, merrily bouncing down the street and then merrily over. There it is in the water. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. I would not intrude on him. A dime, another ball is worthless. Now he senses first responsibility. In a world of possessions, people will take balls. Balls will be lost always, little boy. And no one buys a ball back. Money is external. He is learning well behind his desperate eyes the epistemology of loss, how to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days how to stand up. Now, looking at the meanings of the difficult words and expressions. Now, in line number 5, we have, oh, there are other balls. These words suggest that the loss is not important enough to worry about. The very next line, we have shaking grief, which means sadness which greatly affects the boy. Next, we have rigid, which means stiff. Now, coming to line number 9, we have intrude on, which means to enter a situation where one is not welcome. The very next line, we have dime, which is a US currency, 10 cents. The same line, we have a word worthless, which means useless or valueless. Now, coming to line number 15, we have a word desperate, which means hopeless. And the very next line, that is the third last line of the poem, we have epistemology of loss, which means understanding the nature of loss, what it means to lose something. The word epistemology is a study of the nature of knowledge itself. Now, from reading between the lines, we get to see that the poem is about a child who has lost his ball. A ball which doesn't cost much, and neither is it difficult to get another one. But then too, the boy seems to be upset. Why is it so? Well, children, childhood is that phase of life where a person is innocent, carefree, and free of any responsibilities. A child does not have any worries, but as he grows up, he comes face to face with the harsh realities of life, like loss and separation from near and dear ones. So now, coming to the explanation, let's look at the first 4 lines. What is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go, merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over. There it is in the water. Here in these opening lines, the poet asks his readers a question as to what the boy should do now, as he sees the ball, which is the boy's dearest possession, rolling away from him, bouncing cheerfully and happily all the way down the street and finally falling into a water body. The boy stands helpless, watching his ball fall into the water before his eyes. This was his first loss, and he is extremely sad. I am sure, children, you too must be sympathizing with the little boy. Now coming to the next 4 lines. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. Now, in these lines, the poet says that it is pointless trying to console the boy by telling him that he can get other balls just like the one which he has lost. The poet feels that this false consolation will not make the boy feel any better, as he sees the boy's face reflecting sorrow. In his grief, he becomes stiff, and then he starts shivering, intently watching the ball, which is now lying in the water, from where he knows he cannot fetch it. It seems that with the loss of the ball, the boy's childhood memories, that is, the days when he played with the ball, have all been drained in the harbor along with the ball. Now the next few lines, which go like this. I would not intrude on him a dime another ball is worthless. Now he sends his first responsibility. In a world of possessions, people will take balls. Balls will be lost always, little boy. And no one buys a ball back. Money is external. The poet feels that it would be wrong to invade into the boy's silence. Giving him 10 cents to purchase another ball, too, will be useless and valueless. He says that because the new ball will not make him realize that keeping the ball safe was his responsibility. He continues by saying that the boy is undergoing a transformation. He begins to realize that the ball, which symbolizes possessions such as materialistic things, family, and friends, was his responsibility. The poet stresses on the fact that it becomes your prime duty to keep all your possessions safe, although nothing will be yours forever. A person has to learn to live with losses, and the loss of the ball symbolizes the death of somebody. No one can buy back such things. You cannot attach your feelings to money, which is an external thing, and money can't buy you everything. Even if it does buy you materialistic things, it can't bring back that same sense of belongingness. Now coming to the last 4 lines of the poem. He is learning well behind his desperate eyes the epistemology of loss, how to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days how to stand up. The poet says that amidst his sadness, the little boy is learning an important lesson, the epistemology of loss. That is, he is trying to understand the nature of loss and accept it. He must learn to bear the miseries of life, which may be endless, and then stand up again. This is the bitter truth of life, which everyone has to learn one day. Some people learn to come out of their miseries very soon, but some take some time. Sooner or later, we all have to learn to live without our near and dear possessions, as they will not last our whole life. So children, with this I come to the end of the explanation. Now let us look at the rhyme scheme and the poetic devices. Now this poem does not follow any definite rhyme scheme. So we do not have any rhyme scheme in this poem. Coming to the poetic devices, children, I have already discussed some poetic devices such as anaphora, assonance, enjambment, alliteration, and personification in my previous video. For the previous devices, you can refer to the link which is given in the description. Now the first poetic device that we have in this poem is alliteration. In line number 14, we can see B sound being repeated. B of buy, B of ball, and B of back. This is a perfect example of alliteration. Next, we have anaphora, where words or expressions are repeated in consecutive lines. What of the first line and what of the second line, they have been repeated. Next, we have merrily of line number 3 and merrily of line number 4. These two examples are perfect examples of anaphora. The next poetic device is apostrophe. This poetic device is used when the poet addresses his or her poem to an absent audience. In this poem, the poet uses the device of an apostrophe in the 13th line as he directly speaks to the little boy and tells him that balls are always liable to get lost, but we never see the boy responding to him. And the last poetic device that we have in this poem is repetition, where words are repeated. Now you have in line number 2 where you have what being repeated. What is he to do? And again you see in line number 13 where balls has been repeated. Balls will be lost always, little boy. So this is the end of the poetic devices in our poem. So now let us look at the central idea of the poem. The central idea of the poem is that losses are inevitable, and with that loss one senses his or her first responsibility in this materialistic world, where those whom you love and your worldly possessions will not be yours forever. You need to overcome such feelings and start life afresh. So children, with this I come to the end of my explanation. I hope I have been able to make things clear for you. Thank you and all the best.